Hey, it's New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from the Spiritual Awareness Center located in Fresno, California, the heart of the Central Valley. It's a great place to be today. And it's a great day. I hope you claimed your day this morning before you even opened your eyes, because it's a gift of God to you individually, to each and every one of us. When we claim our good, as we start our day, we have an expectation and intention to see more good in our day unfold. And that's why we're here. That's why I share this show on a weekly basis. I like sharing with people. I like hearing stories back from people that have put this philosophy into practice in their life and seeing wonderful things, sometimes what they even term miraculous, unfold in their life. And in truth and reality, it's just God doing what God does. And that's exciting always. So the last couple of weeks, I've been working out of what we call the textbook. That's the Science of Mind, Part 5, which starts off from the teachings of Jesus. And last week we went through, and I really nailed down, I think I spent a lot of time working on this concept of judgment, how it affects our lives and how it affects the things that we experience in our lives. And I closed up last week with a section on healing. And I'm going to start there as we move forward today. And Ernest Holmes says, self-healing must come first of all. And that really is the truth. We want to go out and create a better world for ourselves and everybody else, but we got to create a better self to begin with. So he says, if we think we can guide our brother aright while our own feet still walk in darkness, we are mistaken. We must first clarify our own vision, and then we shall become as lights, lighting the way for others. The idea of lights lighting the way for others it's a great metaphor because, light, I'm surrounded by light right now, and there's not one part of this light that tells me what I have to do or what I have to be or what I have to think. But what it does is it lights up my world around me so that I can see what's going on. And so I can think what I need to think, and I can do what I need to do. When that light is a warm light, I do that in a loving consciousness. When it's a light that, a lot of you aren't old enough to remember back in the days when they had strobe lights and psychedelic stuff going on, but you could walk into a room and lights would be flashing. It'd be really harsh. And that type of light, could set somebody off emotionally, and sometimes it did back in the day. But the kind of light we're talking about, the light from each and every one of us, that light is centered within us. There's something at the core of our beings that was put there by our Creator. And it's meant for us to nurture and to grow that something into a greater light and bring it into the world through ourselves, because we are the divine principle. We are God presenting as us, presenting through us, and bringing into the world what we bring into the world with the gift that God's given us, but through our own power of choice and volition. And it's in the recognition that we have that choice, and it's the recognition that we are a representation, a presentation of the divine that really begins our spiritual journey. So, in the early parts of the teachings of Jesus, what Holmes is laid out some things that we should kind of be aware of for ourselves as we're seeking to create a better life for ourselves and to participate in this life. And so when he comes back here and he says, healing ourselves is where we got to start. Sometimes we get an idea or we get a concept and we want to go out and take our sword or saber out in the world or, whatever, our banner, and we want to change the world. But it doesn't work that way, because when we go out and tell other people how they have to be, do, and think, oftentimes not only do we meet resistance, but we meet pushback and anger and things that aren't so good. And we don't need to do that. So how then do we change the world, you say? Well, this is how we change the world. We make a brighter light for ourselves. We create that brighter light in ourselves. And that's what Holmes is talking about. So as we move forward with this today, I want to read something. I'm kind of working back and forth between Living the Science of Mind and the Science of Mind book, but this is just a little something here. Holmes, he writes, he says, one of our fundamental propositions is that God is all there is. When you say that God is all there is, that includes everything, all possibility and all action. For spirit is the invisible essence and substance of all form. Spirit in this case is what we would call God, and what we call God however you may choose to make that call for yourself, do it in a way that works for you. You know, I've had people come to me and say, you know, I've been involved with and whatever they've been involved with, and I've been beaten up by, you know, the word God, or even, you know, talk about Jesus. I don't want to hear about Jesus. I've been beaten up with Jesus, you know, or people that have come. It's amazing. People that have had no faith at all. Sometimes we call them atheists, but in truth, they really do have a faith of sorts. And they come, well, I don't want to hear about Jesus. I want to hear about this thing where, you know, there's this power I can use. The thing about the teachings of Jesus, the monumental gift that was to the world, is that when you put into practice those things that he taught, when you make that the major emphasis within your life, things change. And Ernest Holmes recognized that. And in his journey, in his own spiritual journey of discovery that led to the science of mind, religious science, he began to realize the importance that this man played in bringing spiritual teachings to the world in a way, in a concise form, in a place where someone could go and find them, that wasn't to be found in any other spiritual teaching. It's not that they weren't taught. You can find a lot of the teachings in other spiritual teachings. There's a lot of basic, fundamental spiritual truths that are out there. But with the master teacher, what Holmes found was a place where he could go and he could look at the teachings, he could put the teachings into practice in his life, and he could see how they unfolded. So, self-healing must come first. On his journey of spiritual discovery, Ernest Holmes, he didn't create the concept of scientific prayer, but he formalized it in a way that is taught within science of mind and spirit, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But the New Thought spiritual teachings, which comprise many different denominations, if you will, all regard prayer as one of the most fundamental, foundational aspects of this philosophy that we put into practice. The thing about, and understanding this thing about prayer, and sometimes when people come to New Thought, they're a little confused because we don't sit down and when we say we don't ask God to do something for us, as if God is something out there and may or may not answer our prayers depending on, you know, whether we stand in favor with God or, you know, whatever, but that we declare a truth that God is everywhere present, and we just read that God is infinite, and all that is God expressing, which includes us, includes the actions that we do and the conditions and the effects that we experience in our life. This is all part of God unfolding for us, so that when we seek to commune with God, we do it through what we call affirmative prayer treatment or affirmative prayer. And Holmes broke this down into 5 very easily understood steps, but it's not like it's, you know, formed in concrete or anything. These are just guidelines and tools for someone to use. And so if you're not familiar with this, I'm gonna take this moment here in the show and just kind of go through this a little bit. It's not really part of today's lesson in the book, but you need to have an understanding, and that is the first part of this prayer, affirmative prayer, is a recognition of God. Not just a recognition of God as in consciously saying, well, God is everywhere, but a recognition within ourselves, a meditative embodiment, if you will, of the concept and the consciousness of God being everywhere present, infinite. And as we do that, the next step kind of flows right into that, and that is the understanding that as God being everywhere and God being all that there is, that I myself, I am some part of that divine presence, that I am God expressing as me. In other words, we recognize the union, the unification, the oneness of God with all of God's creation, if you will. And then the third step is where we make that declaration of what it is that we choose to see expressed in our life. And there are principles and guidelines involved with this, and some of those are things that we've talked about. We have to bring our own beingness, our own consciousness in alignment with divine principle. You can't go out and want something from and take something from someone else. You cannot bring judgment or hatred or anger. You've got to give up doubt. You've got to walk away from fear, and you can do that. We each can do that. We believe that and teach that Jesus was the most masterful one at doing this. But what he could do, he didn't hold himself out as the great exception, but rather he's the great example for all of us to look at and to listen to and to understand what he taught and to put it into practice in our lives. So we make our declaration. And then, in recognition of the truth demonstrating in our lives, we declare our gratitude, our thanksgiving. Being thankful for that which already is, whether we have seen it demonstrated yet or whether it's in the yet to come, but we are in an internal place of beingness, of gratitude, being thankful for the what is. And the last part's, oftentimes gets kind of shortchanged, if you will, and I think I mentioned this last week, but the idea of, we release this to God, we let it go. It's more than just saying the words. It really is the doingness of it. And I think last week when I spoke about it, I used the example of, you let it go and you don't involve yourself or worry about it, just like you don't worry about whether the sun is going to rise tomorrow. It's a knowingness that you don't even think about. It's an acceptance of it already being so. And when we can get to that within ourselves as part of our own personal prayer work, amazing things happen. And I've talked to people and I've worked with people through the years that that's like the hardest thing for them to get in this thing is, I can understand that God's infinite, and I can understand that God being infinite, that I'm some part of God, and I can understand I speak my word, as we say, and I'm thankful for that. But in the letting go part, they say, well, yeah, of course I let it go, but they don't. And when you begin to point this out to someone, oftentimes they don't even see that they haven't, but sometimes they do, and it's a great revelation. When we release our word, when we give it up and we let go, it's not just saying we let go and then go about looking for it. We let go with the knowing that it's going to show up in the time, in the place when the divine principle is best set to express in our lives that which we have prayed or treated for. And not a minute before. And we either have faith and confidence, belief that that's the way it is, or we don't. So that's kind of the idea of prayer treatment, affirmative prayer treatment. We're going to take our first break, and then I'm going to start back in the book under what Holmes calls scientific prayer. And we'll move forward with that, and I'll see you when we come back.
At Laulea Travels, we strive to make your vacation experience as relaxing as possible. From the time you start dreaming about it to the time you're sharing your vacation photos with your friends and coworkers. Our vow is to treat your vacation as if it were our own. If personal service, attention to detail, and years of travel experience are important to you, then let Laulea Travels plan your next dream vacation. Visit lauleatravels.com or call 559-360-1933.
Vote for Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council in District 3. Over the last decade, Miguel has collaborated with residents, public institutions, and business leaders to improve public safety, increase education access and success, and increase workforce training and jobs. As Fresno City Councilman, Miguel Arias will build upon this track record of success. Learn more at miguelariasforcouncil.com.
This message is paid for and approved by Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council 2018.
Fresno Dixieland Society presents the Sounds of Mardi Gras, February 7th to the 10th, 2019, at the Doubletree by Hilton. Get your tickets today. For more information, go to FresnoDixie.com or call Linda at 209-534-1924. Again, that's 209-534-1924.
With Organic Pastures Raw Milk, you're getting a product that has been meticulously managed from grass to glass. From our pastures to our dairy, creamery, and distribution, we work hard to produce a product that is safe and clean for you.
Got lactose intolerance or dairy allergies? Discover delicious raw milk and discover dairy the way it's supposed to be. We provide tours and would love to see you. Come visit the cows, watch the milking, the cheese being made, and learn all about raw milk. We're just 20 miles south and west of Fresno, California. Call to schedule a tour at 559-846-9732.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling from Fresno, California. Going back again to Living the Science of Mind, I want to read this. Ernest Holmes says, "Spiritual power is of no particular value to us until we use it. We must not only be conscious of this power, but we must be actively conscious of it." And this is one of the first lessons we learn in spiritual science. We can recognize that there's a power and a presence for good in the universe available to each and every one of us as we open ourselves up to it. We can make that statement. We can know it intellectually, but it's putting it into practice. That's what Holmes is talking about. Being actively conscious is when we begin to use it, because that's when we really begin to participate in our spiritual evolvement, in our spiritual journey, in becoming a vital force in how we experience this thing that we call life. And we can be that vital force because God has given us that gift. So, one of the ways we do this is something called scientific prayer. And I outlined the format, but this is a little different approach for right now, but it helps us understand. He says, we come to a definite teaching regarding prayer. He says, "We shall receive that for which we ask. We shall be open, it shall be open to us when we knock, and we shall find that for which we are searching." This teaching implies the definiteness of spiritual and mental work. God is intelligent mind and spirit, and there is a direct response from this universal intelligence to our intelligence. When we are speaking our word through our prayer or through our affirmations, when we're bringing our thoughts into an alignment with divine principle, right thinking, if you will. And what I mean by right thinking is, it's nothing really mystical or anything, but if your thoughts are limiting in some way, if you look out in the world and you see lack and you see discord and things that you would say are not necessarily of a divine nature, they're out there in the world, but they don't have to live in our mind. We don't have to live with limitation and lack. We don't have to live with fear and doubt and worry. And we do that by becoming aware of the thoughts that travel through our mind as we go through the day. You know, I've said in the past, I've been told we think somewhere, and depending on who you listen to, somewhere between 15 and 60,000 thoughts in a day. Well, most of us aren't aware of those thoughts, but somehow they manage to get through our mind, I guess, because there's people who have come up with these numbers. But if that quantity of thought is going through our mind, and thought is an energy, and thought creates, and all thought creates at some level, because there's something that we call the law that responds, then we want our thought process to be a life-affirming, a thought process of harmony and peace. And this is why, you know, like we talked about last week, when we get caught up in judgment and hatred and anger and all this stuff, those are the thoughts that are going through our mind. We have to filter those out, because that's not what the divine principle, that's not what God is. God is peace, harmony, beauty, love. If we want to experience that divine principle expressing us through us consciously, and that's what we're talking about here, then we need to be in alignment with that. It's kind of like we've got to run a parallel thought pattern to what God is already expressing, so that we can make that connection, if you will, in our mind. Yeah, that's just a metaphor, but it can work for some people. So when we talk about right thinking, we're talking about thinking of love, peace, harmony. That still leaves all that stuff out there, doesn't it? And boy, don't we want to go out there and deal with it, don't we? We do, because the world tells us that. The physical world, the material world tells us that that's how things change. But yet, people that have truly changed the world have not changed the world from that basis. You look at Martin Luther King, you look at Gandhi, you look at Thoreau, things that Emerson thought. You go to the Buddha, Lao Tzu. There's people and mystics and ancient sages, spiritualists from all ages. And they didn't talk about going out and conquering with an army. They talked about creating that light within ourselves, creating that goodness within ourselves. And that's what we're talking about here. Because in truth, that's how real change takes place in the world. It doesn't take place by us telling somebody else what they got to do. It takes place within us by creating the peace we want to see in the world. He says, if we ask for bread, we shall not receive stone. But we are told we must ask, and this is critical, we must ask believing. When Jesus taught that it's done unto us as we believe, it wasn't just what we want to believe during our prayer process. And again, this goes back to that trend of thought, the trend of thinking that we have. We have to believe that there is an infinite presence that we call God. We have to believe that God is abundance manifested in potentiality for each and every person. We've got to have an understanding that there is a love and a loving presence throughout the entire process of life and living in the world that's available to us, but we also have to believe that we can open ourselves up to it and be accepting of it. And that's part of our spiritual path, our spiritual journey. So when we're going to speak our word, which is our personal prayer work, if you will, these are the things that within ourselves that we want to kind of bring into alignment, to bring into an internal point of beingness, if you will. And so for some of us it's easy, and for some of it's a little difficult. But for all of us, it's something that we can do and can accomplish. So we move forward here, and he says, the answer to prayer is in the prayer when it is uttered or thought. We do not pray aright when we are in opposition to the fundamental harmony. And that nails it right there. We do not pray aright when we are in opposition to the fundamental harmony. In other words, when we are in opposition to God. How can I, as God expressing as me, have an expectation to see that expression made manifest if I'm closing the gates of the good that is potentially available to me because I want to create a separateness within myself? And in truth, that's what we do. When we recognize God as being everywhere present, and we recognize our oneness with God, that's we talked about the first two steps of affirmative prayer, but in truth, it's not just a recognition. It is a reality. And it's a reality that we need to come to not just an intellectual understanding of, but a beingness acceptance of, if you will. It's about the only way I know to put it. I can talk about God all day long, or spirit, or goddess, or Gaia, or anything else. And as long as it just sits between my ears and my brain, it's not really affecting my life experience. But when I quiet myself and I go within and I seek to calm my mind and to experience that which has been gifted me within me, as each and every one of us can do, or when I look out into the world and I realize that no matter what it is that I'm looking at, it's the presence, the action of God manifesting in form or conditions or activities, that all is God. And it's not about whether I put a judgment on it or not. All is God. And if all is God, then somehow, in some way, there's goodness to be found there. And what I'm doing, if you can get this as I'm talking, is I'm bringing my mind and I'm putting it into a state of consciousness, a realization of a greater truth than what the physical reality tells me. Now, the thing is, Jesus says it's done unto us as we believe. And that's very true. But our beliefs are our reality. And this is something that psychological sciences has begun to, well, hasn't begun, they've been looking at this for a while, and cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the current therapies based on this understanding that it's not the thing that we experience that causes our experience, but it's our belief about the thing that creates our experience in effect, it creates our reality. And that's why two individuals can participate in the very same event and come away with different realities. And it's kind of hard to grasp sometimes when you think about, we're talking about reality, like this table, this book is reality. We're not talking about reality like I'm thinking a thought that isn't it good, and someone's going, well, isn't it bad? You know, it goes much deeper than that. It really is a reality. And so, you know, when we look out in the world and we see things that maybe we would like not to approve of, we have to understand that it's still God expressing. And when we begin to look at those things as God expressing, it doesn't mean that we're not going to maybe set up boundaries or avoid certain things, but it means that we're still going to experience the presence of God. Now, Joel Goldsmith, an early New Thought teacher, one of the things he taught is we need to practice the presence of God. And that's essentially what we're doing, is practicing the presence of God in all things and in all that we do. This helps to bring our thought into alignment, or to, as we said earlier, to have right thinking. So, again, we do not pray aright when we are in opposition to fundamental harmony. If I'm thinking discord within myself, that's where I need to start my work. You know, I got to go there before I can go somewhere else. So we work on that. We create harmony within ourselves. As we do that within ourselves, it's amazing. It happens to manifest in our life. It's amazing the way it happens. The next section, he says, he entitles God and Creation. He says, we are to know the truth by its fruits. The certain estimate of reality is ever evidenced by its worth in actual living. Here again, we're talking about reality. We are not to separate life from living, nor God from his creation. One is the cause, the other is the effect. The invisible things of God are manifested through the visible, and unless the invisible thought and desire of man is in line with truth, his acts will fall into error. While we are told not to judge, we are clearly warned not to fall under the illusion of accepting the false for the true. Here again, Holmes goes back to this concept of judgment, and you'll find it throughout a lot of his writings, and he addresses it in various ways. And why is this so important? Because it's so easy to judge. I mean, you know, we grew up with it, right? You know, I like this, I don't like that. Well, that's fine if we're talking about breakfast cereal, maybe. But not when we're talking about other beings. Not when we're talking about life. Not when we're talking about limiting somebody else or condemning somebody else because we don't like them. All of a sudden, things change. But we've learned this as a habit pattern. But like all habits, we can change our habit patterns when we become consciously aware of it and we begin to work through it. And that's the amazing thing. It's one of the things that we teach in New Thought, is how to make that transition from being habitually stuck in our stuff, so to speak, to being open and accepting to a greater truth, a greater reality in our life experience, and then seeing it manifest and unfold in our lives. You know, if you believe that God is infinite, and I do, if you believe God created everything, and I do, if you believe that God is a loving presence, something beyond even what we can begin to define or understand, and I also believe that, then how can you believe that God would choose to limit its creation, his creation, her creation, or whatever's creation? How can you believe that? It doesn't make any sense. God is everywhere present. God is the power. God is the energy. God is the sun. God is the thought. God is the thing made manifest. There is no separating God from life or life from God. When we begin to recognize that, we shift our mindset to that understanding. Things begin to shift within us. So we'll take our second break, and I'll see you when we come back.
I'm Greg Steen, your host for the Truth for Seniors show. Glad you're joining us today, and coming to you from Central Valley Talk in the heart of Fresno. So every Wednesday at 2 you can find us, and we'll be here giving you the most up-to-date and accurate information possible, bringing you experts, as we promised, from lots of different fields related to seniors, senior needs, the caregiver needs, and everything that goes with that. So if you're looking for the right information and timely information, this is the place to be.
Harness the power of the sun and cut your electric bill down to size with Soltech Solar. Call today and request a free quote at 559-325-6907 or visit soltechsolar.com.
Certifying foster homes for placement of children suffering from abuse, neglect, and abandonment. To help, contact Lisa Caceres with Angels of Grace at 559-268-0000.
CentralValleyTalk.com.
Welcome back once again to New Thought Talk. I am your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. I hope you've been enjoying the show up to this point. We're going to move forward now. We're talking about this idea that there was someone that walked the face of the earth some 2,000 years ago, and he shared some wisdom that is timeless, and that, in essence, it kind of set in the background to a lot of spiritual beliefs and religions, but it was always there. It was... I hate to say it was rediscovered, but it came to the forefront through the pioneers of the New Thought movement, and Ernest Holmes was one of those, and religious science, what we call science of mind and spirit, is a result of that. It's a faith, a philosophy, a way of life. A way of life. A philosophy is a way of life. Most people don't understand the concept of living a philosophy as a way of life. There are some that do. But it goes to the core of our very being, because when we begin to live a philosophy, we're either true to what we live or we're not, and if we're not, usually we move on to other things. But when we recognize a greater truth, a spiritual understanding of something that is so incredibly awesome, that has been before our very beingness for all of humanity throughout time, and that through the process of the evolutionary social process and things, it's finally really kind of made its presence known to modern humanity at a time when, through things like the internet, Facebook and YouTube and all this stuff, that it can be shared worldwide. Holmes believed that we could reach enough individuals and make this available to them, in such a way that they would choose to see the truth that's in this, and in doing so, not necessarily give up anything out of their personal belief system, but to embody something that maybe they hadn't put in that type of consciousness, and in doing so, elevate consciousness to a level that would ultimately cause a shift in humanity through the world as a whole. You want to create peace in the world, create peace in yourself. It's the way to do it. It's what he taught. Moving on, he says, entering the kingdom of reality. He says, it's not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, who enters the kingdom of harmony. Only those who will do the will of love can enter. Only those who will do the will of love. In other words, I'm working myself up in this new thought philosophy and stuff, but I still want to hang on to all my stuff that, let's just say, if we said it's antithetical to love, how about in opposition to love or in disharmony to love, whatever words work for you. In other words, it's not love. We can't move forward. Individually, we can't move forward. And we know Jesus also told the story of the blind leading the blind. You know, you cannot teach what you don't own, and you cannot be a light in darkness if you don't create that fire within yourself and grow it up, that gift that God has given us. You can't, just because you say, you know, I am a spiritual being, or I'm a new thought person, or I'm a Christian, or a Jew, or a Muslim, or anything else. You can't bring good into the world by just saying it. You've got to express it from an inner beingness. And that's what this is truly all about. So he says, the wise man builds his house on the solid rock of truth, and not on the shifting sands of instability. And what are we talking about when we're talking about the shifting sands of instability? We're talking about those things in life that our five senses, pick a hand, tell us is really reality. This is why it becomes important to understand how reality is expressed within each and every one of us in our consciousness, in our mind. If we see the material world as reality, where's the room for any divine principle? Well, if we say that, you know, that divine principle, that thing we call God, is, you know, waiting for us at some far off time, well, if that's your chosen belief, so be it. But if you look at the world and you say, this creation, all that is, and not just what exists here, but what I can see in the night sky and beyond that, all that is really in truth the body of the divine, is God expressing as God. Okay? If you really see that as God, then you cannot look outside of yourself for something that's going to serve you on your spiritual journey. Because you were created in the image and likeness of the divine principle, a level of consciousness, a level of mindedness, to know and understand and embody a reality, a true reality, that's not on shifting sands. You talk to any physicist and they'll tell you that no matter what it is you look at in the material world, whether it be the book, the table, whether it be stars in the sky, it's all going to go away at some point in time. The shifting sands, there's instability, there's no truth, there's no reality to it. Now, the one thing that we know that's true is energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form type to another. But what if energy is infinite? What if energy is the basis of consciousness? What if actually energy is a part of the divine principle expressing? What if energy is life itself? When we talk about reality, when we talk about love, we're talking at this level of understanding. Now, for some people that may be a little deep, but it's a concept that we can all get. The wise man builds his house on the solid rock of truth, not on the shifting sands of instability. He measures causes and effects and estimates reality by that which is real and enduring. What is real and enduring? What is real and enduring? God is real and enduring. The divine principle is real and enduring. Truth is real and enduring. And the potential for each and every one of us to be more than we are is real and enduring, and it stays with us our entire life. You know, it was it Ivan Illich? I don't remember whether it was Dostoevsky or one of the other Russian authors that wrote this. But at the end of his life, he was wondering about, you know, if his life really mattered, if it was important, if he'd done all that he could with his life experience. And the truth is, that's a question many people ask. Sometimes at the end of their life, and sometimes young people, they ask it at early ages, and sometimes they don't find an answer they're comfortable with, and bad things happen. But they don't have to, because the truth is ever available. The potential is ever available. But it's not just to get along. It's not to just get by. But it's to excel, to be abundant in happiness, harmony, peace, love, and materiality in your life. Think about it. Everything in life that exists is still some part of God. You are some part of God. And there's nothing that separates you from any part of God in your life experience. Reality. Okay? He measures causes and effects and estimates reality by that which is real and enduring. The foolish man, the foolish person, living only in sense perception, has no measure for reality. When I'm looking only at external things, what do I have to measure against? The only thing I have to measure against is what I don't have. And when I look at what I don't have, that becomes my reality. When I live in a recognition of truth, a recognition of God being everywhere present, and a recognition that there is a potential available to me as I align myself with that potential to express and experience life in ways that I've never even considered. And that's just not for me, that's for all of us. When you begin to see the truth of who you are, the truth of who you are is the truth of God expressing as you. How awesome is that? How incredible is that? Is it a big bite for you? Take time. It's not that big of a bite, really, because there's that which is within you that seeks to express itself. He says, going on here, the next section is healing of the centurion's servant. Most of us know this story. He says, we got a beautiful story in the life of Jesus which shows his great compassion and love for humanity. The healing of the centurion's servant. Note that the centurion would not allow Jesus to come to his house, but asked him to speak his word only. Applies to us also. We don't have to go anywhere. We can speak our word. When we speak our word, when we're aligned with God, when we seek good for ourselves and others, when we learn to believe and to accept and to let, the stuff of that world go, things begin to change. But it can be tough. We get tried. We have things that come into our lives, and we can call them problems or obstacles. But here's the key. When something comes into our life, is it bigger than our availability of God to deal with it? In other words, do we have a bigger God than we have an obstacle? And I'd like to say that concept was original to me, but it wasn't. That concept is Johnny Coleman's from UFBL, and she's no longer with us, but it's a great concept. Do you have a bigger God? Do you have a bigger God than anything that comes in your life? And you either believe that you do or you don't. Now, if you don't, that's not damning per se. It just means that your faith, your level of belief, hasn't risen to that level yet. So work on it. And that's what we do. That's our life experience. That's our spiritual journey. We work on it. As we work on it, we get stressed. As we get stressed, we work on it some more, and then we grow. And that's the way life was meant to be. Life was not meant to be easy. Life was meant to be stressful. The human being grows in stress. Now think about this for a minute before we're going to cut away to our break, but I want you to think about this before we go. A baby coming into the world. I've talked about them learning how to walk, and that's stressful. But think about this for a minute. A newborn baby coming into the world has to learn first what things are in the world. the words to address those things, a language to communicate those things, how to walk, how to interact, how to use these things in such a way that they can pick up and move things around. In other words, every conceivable thing that you can imagine, and even beyond that, a baby has to learn. And they do it without breaking a sweat. Well, they might get hurt a little bit. They may fall. They may burn themselves when they're learning that something is hot and what hot means. But the truth is, that potential is available to each and every one of us. Now, science does tell us that there's certain learning capacities in the brain that with age from childhood as we grow forward, we lose some of those. But science also tells us that as we begin to work back on those things, if we really, as adults, even as older adults, as we really work on it, that we can learn, that the brain can change, it can morph, that it can grow, and it can actually establish new and greater functions. It's a powerful thing. Anyway, we're going to take our next and last break, and I'll see you when we come back. Tell us about this.
Okay, so this listing is over in Woodward Lakes.
Ooh,
it is
nice.
at 10595 North Seacrest in the 93730. It is a quick walk to the clubhouse where you have a junior Olympic size pool, clubhouse facilities, gym, and those views you just saw of the lake.
Right.
This home has been completely remodeled downstairs. You see the nice kitchen.
Yeah,
very
nice.
custom kitchen, lifetime warranty on the cabinets, granite, beautiful, gorgeous granite in the kitchen counters, newer bathrooms. It's actually vinyl plank flooring that can withstand a lot more, puppy scratches. There's,
It is
it
family friendly.
It is family friendly, exactly.
And that's a good thing.
Yes. It has a gorgeous pool in the backyard,
We
3
saw
bedrooms,
that,
2
yeah.
baths, 1,624 square feet
Nice
on a
size
corner cul-de-sac lot
Ooh,
in a gated community.
that sounds like a prime piece of property.
I think so.
What's the asking on that, eh?
The listing price is $375,000.
Cool. That's a great price for it. Once again, the address on that place.
That is 10595 North Seacrest Avenue in Fresno, 93730.
Vote for Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council in District 3. Over the last decade, Miguel has collaborated with residents, public institutions, and business leaders to improve public safety, increase education access and success, and increase workforce training and jobs. As Fresno City Councilman, Miguel Arias will build upon this track record of success. Learn more at miguelariasforcouncil.com.
This message is paid for and approved by Miguel Arias for Fresno City Council 2018.
Welcome back to New Thought Talk. I'm your host, the Reverend Steve Walling. Before I continue on with this, I want to read you a little something out of a little book that Ernest Holmes wrote called The Philosophy of Jesus. And he says, right now, we are in this position. Do we believe in a power greater than we are? And do we believe that it is ready, willing to meet our needs? And that's the question. Do you believe that? And if you can answer affirmative or even maybe to that, then you can begin to move forward. He says, we are just now beginning to learn how to look at this power and to bring this power to what we're doing. We are beginning to understand the relationship of this power to our belief and to our faith. The relationship of this power to our belief and our faith. Okay. When we begin to understand that there is a relationship between the power, the divine power that is everywhere present, and our belief, that when this man said it's done unto us as we believe, there's much more to that than what's commonly been considered. And just keep that in the back of your mind. I want to go back. I want to finish off this last part here. When Jesus was talking to the centurion about healing, he says, he He says, what majesty and what might? From whence came the power of this spoken word when he spoke to the centurion? From where came this power? It's the same power I was just talking about. He says, is it not necessary to suppose that the word of man, when spoken in compliance with the law of truth, is also all powerful? Consider that. Is it not possible? Well, it is. And there's people out there every day proving this principle in their life. And it's amazing. He says, we cannot believe that Jesus had an occult power not possessed by other men. To think this would be superstition. We certainly cannot suppose that he was especially endowed with power from on high, for this would be to believe in a partial God, not an infinite God. Because if there was Jesus and God, then where's the rest of us fit into that equation? And that's what he's talking about. He says, there is but one logical explanation of the power of Jesus. He believed what he taught and so completely lived his teachings that he was able to demonstrate them. Can you believe what you're learning to the extent that you put it, that you embody it, you put it into practice in your life? Can you believe that when you wake up in the morning, before you open your eyes, can you declare that today is a great day, that is a gift of the divine to you to experience good in all things that happen, regardless of that list of things that you've got to deal with today? You know that you have a co-pilot, a co-creator with you as you're working through the day, and the day's going to be how you choose to experience it, not as life coming at you. You are not a victim. Not now, not ever. Some of us choose victimhood because we fail to realize that we have the ability to be totally responsible for how we experience life. But we don't have to make that choice. We can make a choice for responsibility. We can make a choice for the spiritual truth of who we are. We can make a choice for God in our life expressing. And as we make that choice, as we build our faith in that, we see it unfold in our life. It builds our confidence, it builds our belief, but it makes our light shine ever brighter in the world. You have a light. I have a light. You know, you've seen those images where a bunch of people come together in a gathering at night, and they hold up a lighter and those little things of light. Well, imagine that, if you will, but only imagine that you're looking at the Earth from maybe the space station or something like that. But you're not seeing people holding up a little lighter, but you're seeing the effect of individuals lighting up the light that exists within them and lighting up the world. Imagine that. Imagine a world where there was peace, harmony, happiness, and love. Imagine a world where nobody went to bed at night feeling less than. Imagine that world, and imagine that it is available to us. Imagine that maybe that's what God meant, intended, created us to do and be. If he had gifted us, if it had gifted us, if she had gifted us with it already done and stuff, there'd have been no growth. There'd be no spiritual journey. There'd be no individuality. But we were gifted with the ability to make choice, the ability to choose, and with that ability, we can choose to be in alignment with God and have the law work for us. Or we can choose to be something else, and the law still works for us, and that's something else. If we choose to see ourselves separate from the divine, then we really are separate in our life experience. But if you open yourself up to an acceptance of the divine being everywhere present, infinite, available to all, then that becomes our truth. It becomes our reality. And our reality is based on what we believe, because it's done unto us as we believe. So as you go through this week, think about this. I'm probably going to continue over the next couple of shows, work on this. I'm not going to go through the whole section. I could probably spend an entire year going through this, but I want to cover some of these things because, when you begin to recognize your place in the divine scheme, if you will, and your place is to not just exist, but to express, and not just to express, but to express in incredibly wonderful ways, and that the tools are available to you in potential. Lives change. Your life changes. We can learn to be more than we are. We can learn to be the truth of who we are. But like everything else, that learning is a process. And like all learning, sometimes it's a struggle, you know? Sometimes. I don't know about you, but when I was in college and I was studying for exams, sometimes it was quite a struggle. And sometimes I made it and sometimes I didn't. But I found that if I kept going back, eventually I got it. And that's the process, if you will. If you look out into nature, if you look out into the divine plan, if you will, you see that it is through continued moving forward, continuing struggle, that growth, that movement, that advancement is made. If we sit, we become a victim. If we try to tell the rest of the world how they have to behave in order for us to be aright within ourselves, we become a tyrant. But either way, we become separate from God. And that's not our purpose. That's not our journey. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I'm looking at the clock. We got a little bit of time left. I'm going to close this up for today. If you're familiar with New Thought, religious science, or Unity, or Universal Foundation for Better Living, or Divine Science, or any of the other denominations, and you've not had an opportunity to experience them, you can go online and if you Google New Thought, you'll find resources that will, guide you to a center or a church near you. You're always welcome to email me. I do answer the emails that come in. I also work with people that request affirmative prayer treatment. But I want to thank you for being with us. It's very humbling to have the opportunity to be here each week or most weeks and share my beliefs and feelings with you. And it's amazing to see through feedback that I get the good that people experience in their lives. And I know as I go through each week that there's something in that for someone out there, and I'm thankful and I'm grateful for that. I'm thankful for the studios here and the opportunity to be here, like I said, and the people that have worked with me over the years. I'm thankful that you're here today, whether today is live or whether you're watching us through an archive. But generally, we're here through Facebook at New Thought Talk with Rev Steve on Thursday afternoons at 2 o'clock Pacific Coast time. So if you have the ability to join us then, please do. If you don't, well, you can pick us up afterwards. Like I say, you can always find us on YouTube if you search for New Thought Talk. We've got an archive. I don't know. There's quite a few videos there, and it's nice to hear from people that have looked at something from a couple years ago and have questions and stuff. But I thank you again. May you have a great week and study, embody, know the truth of who you are. Don't ever accept anything less than that truth for who you are. God created you in His likeness, her likeness, its image, to be and express all that you can be. And so I thank you. So as you go through the week, know that the light of God surrounds you, the love of God enfolds you, the power of God protects you, and the presence of God watches over you, because wherever you are, God is there, all is well. I'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.
CentralValleyTalk.com